Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Table Discussion. This time in video format in the third dimension, and that screen, that screen, that screen.
Yeah, we have a whole team helping us out here. Really, just like a robot camera
Yeah.
and two laptops.
Yep.
So yeah, it's so far it's a really different structure than we're used to. I think we have been doing a lot of them remote. We did our first one, I think, in person, right?
Yeah,
So
first one or two, I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
Yeah,
So this is the first one we've done in person for a very like
yep,
a year, basically.
yep.
So it's nice. It's a good time to kind of reconnect because we've been on hiatus for like 3, 4 months. 4 months.
Yeah, something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
So I was in New York for a week,
yeah,
and then you went to California, I
yeah.
think is right. Yeah,
Yeah, we both
um,
did a little traveling,
yeah,
and then just like work for both of us kind of like was crazy for a bit for a variety of different
yeah,
reasons,
yeah.
and things have just very recently kind of stabilized.
Yeah, I was in Japan and Korea too,
Yeah,
also. So
he really went traveling. He went all over the map.
yeah. I took a sabbatical,
Yeah, yeah,
and then switched jobs too, so that adds another like
exactly.
bit of stress too. So that's exciting. But yeah, we're finally back, and we came back, and everything changed
Yeah,
again.
things change so quickly, right? Do we want to go over kind of some of the interesting things that like stand out in our minds in the
Yeah,
last few months that have changed that are kind of cool and like why we think they're cool?
yeah, let's do that.
Cool.
Let's do like a back and forth like for three. So I think
Okay.
for some reason, top of my mind today, for whatever reason, is Dolly 3. I think
Oh yeah.
I think Dolly 3 is probably one of the cooler things that changed over the course of this time.
Yeah.
And I think the coolest part about Dolly 3 is really the integration with ChatGPT,
Yeah.
because where you're using Midjourney or you're using like Stable Diffusion, in a lot of those situations, you would be having to kind of like craft this prompt yourself. Um, and now with Dolly, you've got this AI assistant
Yeah.
kind of constantly crafting this prompt for you. I saw this really good post. I think we can kind of put it in the show notes, but somebody set up like a feedback loop with Dolly and the image API. So it would actually like send something to Dolly, send a request. Dolly would get that, generate an image, then send that image to GPT, describe,
Yeah.
and then it would describe it and send that to Dolly. So it would do this like feedback loop over and over again. And there was this fantastic one where a semi truck turned into an army of corgis, uh, which was just like fantastic. But yeah, I think that interface is really amazing. Dolly's a lot better, and I think a lot more controllable than a lot of other interfaces.
Hmm.
I think compared to Midjourney is very expressive. You definitely feel artistic using it, whereas Dolly feels a bit more procedural. It feels a lot more like it will do what you describe.
Hmm.
Sometimes it falls off the rails a little bit, but like generally what you describe works.
Yeah, yeah. If you looked at like the Dolly 3 like release like website and blog
Hmm.
post, they kind of talk about that a bit. They talk about how much effort they put
Hmm.
into allowing even the longer your description got with let's say Midjourney or even older
Hmm.
models,
Hmm.
the more things would fall off. Like
Hmm.
if you ask for 20 things,
Hmm.
you might get 3 or 4 things,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But with Dolly 3, you might get actually 20 things,
Right.
which is very, very impressive. You ask for like,
Hmm.
I want a hat, I want a dog, I want
Hmm.
a cat, I want a tree, I
Hmm.
want a pond, all these different things,
Yeah.
it'll put them all in there.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, a very important
Hmm.
usability
Hmm.
requirement
Hmm.
because when you're trying to like hypothetically, let's say, replace a pipeline or process that you have that you
Hmm.
generate an image for,
Hmm.
or if this is the first time you're using anything that's generating images,
Hmm.
let's say it's just like, oh, I need to like make, I don't know, an ad campaign.
Yeah.
You want to be very, very explicit about the things you want to have in your ad
Hmm.
campaign, right?
Right.
So being able to have all the things you ask for in there without having to
Hmm.
do a lot of manual editing, a lot of back and forth,
Hmm.
is very, very powerful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's still not perfect,
Yeah.
but I think it really is following the trajectory that I think generally people who were expecting it to improve would expect to see.
Yeah.
Quality has gotten better
Hmm.
than Dolly 2.
Hmm.
Like the actual composability of the page, the descriptions actually mapping to what you see,
Yeah.
all just improving,
Hmm.
and it'll keep improving. Dolly 4 will get better.
Yeah.
Dolly 3.5 might that exists might get better,
Yeah.
and then you'll see. I think more recently we had other things too, iterations.
Hmm.
And yeah, just to take it back to Dolly 3, I think that overall there's almost like a level of like stability and maturity that's just starting, I'd say,
Hmm.
in the AI generation of images.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything to do with what's it called? the latest Stable Diffusion models.
Oh yeah, the text to video and even like image video sort of augmentation. That's like a really big one right now. So I know Runway, I think, is one of the big ones that's doing that, where
Yes,
you take a still image, you highlight specific areas of that image, and then those parts of the image will sort of like animate in a way.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other ones. There's another one that's called Pika Pika Labs.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This is also like I think a Stanford graduate
Hmm.
started this company a little while ago,
Hmm.
and it's gotten quite advanced.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And just video generation in general has
Yeah.
gone from being like kind of felt like what if you went back like a year. I mean, it wasn't a thing a year ago. Well,
Hmm.
it kind of was like you'd see it in like a research paper,
Yeah.
but you didn't have nobody had access to something
Hmm.
like that.
Right.
And now it's like it's kind of where Steel Fusion One I feel like was
Hmm.
when it
Hmm.
came out.
Yeah.
Of course it's different because time length of video is a constraint that pictures don't have.
Hmm.
And we're still at very short windows
Hmm.
of high quality video,
Yeah.
4 to 5 seconds, right?
Right. Right.
You can kind of chain them and loop them, but you lose
Yeah.
coherence pretty quickly.
Hmm.
However, those 4 seconds have gotten higher in quality,
Hmm.
significantly so.
Yeah. Absolutely.
To the point now where I feel like you can probably use some of the better models for like B-roll footage
Mm,
for like
yeah.
a movie, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
B-roll footage of like a palm still at night. Cool, here it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
no
Absolutely.
problem.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The,
Yeah.
one of the things I was thinking about though is Stable Diffusion Turbo,
Hmm.
SDXL Turbo.
Hmm.
Let's see if I
Sure.
can share my screen and kind of show how fast
Yeah.
this is. The cool thing about about this is that it's just like almost real time.
Hmm.
Okay, sign in. Wait, hold on, let me stop sharing so you don't see my Google information. Sign in.
That's always a difficult thing. We're using a new program, and so of course we got to figure it out.
Yeah, we're still getting the hang of it, but it's it's so far it's pretty. I like it. It's pretty
Yeah. Me
nice.
too. I actually think it's already better than the last one we were using. So
Yeah,
it
exactly.
looks great.
Okay, verified I'm a human. That's a whole can of worms that we don't need to do right now. Okay, and so let's just think about a cool thing.
Hmm.
Um, dogs, and it's
Oh wow.
very very quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dogs,
Riding roller skates.
dance. Oh,
Oh,
cool.
dancing.
Let's
Dancing
say
and roller skates. I don't
cool.
know.
Dancing in roller skates. And that's not quite it.
Skateboard,
Yeah, yeah.
but you know.
Let me try adding a space in here.
Yeah, roller skates. Yeah, maybe that would do
Kind of.
it.
I guess it'd be hard to visualize a dog dancing in roller
In roller
skates.
skates, yeah,
Let's say
maybe
on.
on roller skates. Oh, okay.
Eh.
Okay,
Um,
that's quick though.
it's very, very quick.
Yeah.
With people in the background. And it's like,
Mhm,
not the absolute best. It's nowhere near the quality of Della 3, but the whole point of this is that it's incredibly quick.
mhm,
And it's better for like simple things. So like
mhm,
portraits of a dude.
mhm. Yeah, that's a dude.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
I can imagine, like, especially, um, I remember watching this video where this guy talked about how when you're doing film and animation, one of the things that they would do is they kind of like cheat in a way. So they would kind of you could see it in like some of these like old movies where they create these like massive 3D scenes where you're like start at the top of a skyscraper and then you go all the way down all the floors into the basement, and so you're seeing like these like rooms fly by
yeah,
really
yeah,
quick,
yeah.
and so you just need these assets that don't need to like be real, but you can kind of just like mock something together and you can put like a light in, and that's just enough to make it feel real. And I feel like the creation of this like easy ability to create 3D assets, like even this quickly,
Yeah.
and just kind of iterate, that's going to do some like incredible stuff. Just for being able to like um, generate these background pieces of art that really like nobody's getting paid to really build those. It just kind of adds time to what those artists are already having to just do,
Yeah.
right? They're not. No one's going to stare at it. No one's going to look at it very much. It just makes it feel like more believable.
Yeah.
And that believability aspect, I think, is just going to go through the roof.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really interesting opportunities when it comes to
Mhm.
like visual media, and
Mhm.
I think we'll see. We might even start seeing it in like real productions
Mhm.
in the next like year or two. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the quality's going quite quick.
Mhm.
Uh, what's going to look in a year?
Mhm.
Hypothetically speaking.
Yeah.
So we'll probably see. I mean,
Mhm.
what was it? I think I saw one of the heads one of the leads of some DreamWorks
Mhm.
project. I'm not sure which one.
Mhm.
If maybe not like the company as a whole
Mhm.
was mentioning that within like 5 years,
Mhm.
these tools will be heavily used
Mhm.
for creation and generation of like animated movies.
Right.
And I get it. I mean, I get why.
Mhm.
Let me see if I can find Pico Labs.
Sure.
Their um, most recent like video.
Mhm.
And this is it right here.
Nice. You have to reshare again.
Yeah, let me just go here and share
Yeah.
this one, and you can kind of see the quality. Let me just refresh this page too, so you can kind of see like this already kind of feels like a B-roll, like um, uh, assortment of images and videos.
Mhm.
But like that looks like an animated movie.
Mhm.
These look like things that you would see
Mhm.
in real movies.
Mhm.
And as we do have like higher expectations for quality than we
Mhm.
did like 10 years ago, of course,
Yeah.
for like animations and videos and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But if you think about things like especially indie films
Mhm.
or like student films,
Mhm.
where the effort required to create any movie is much
Mhm.
harder when you have like one person doing all the work.
Yeah.
Something like this can really help you get much more quality, much more
Right.
bang for your buck, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I think. Yeah. I think we're definitely under like an interesting turning point for just really all of us.
yeah.
Um, yeah. I think the other one I'm thinking about, kind of going forward and kind of
Mhm.
thinking more is of course like the massive Dev Days announcement of
The
a
store.
much cheaper, much more
Mhm.
capable GPT model that's being released. I think that's sort of being teased right now. We're in still preview.
Yeah.
I've kind of tested it out. I've put it through its paces. It definitely underperforms compared to GPT-4 right now,
Yeah.
at least when it comes to um, like specifying what the end outcome should be. So in terms of just being able to do that extra specificity, that doesn't work very well right
Yeah.
now. I don't think it's very like not trainable, but like uh, you can't exactly like make it do something very specific that you have in mind. I think it's pretty creative still, but when it comes to like output this in this way
Mhm.
and be accurate about it, that accuracy is not really
Yeah.
there. So I think this new GPT, I mean, they focused on cost.
I think that's exactly what it is,
Yeah.
right? I think. Do you have any suspicions as to how they did it? I have an idea. I think they
Hmm.
probably did like what's it called, like 8-bit quantization, or like or less,
Mm.
where
Mm.
you reduce the size of like the parameter count,
Hmm.
so you lose a lot of like the definition of each parameter, but you
Hmm.
get much more
Oh,
like
interesting.
higher savings in like memory,
Hmm.
and that probably also cut down, probably
Hmm.
found some ways to prune a lot of those parameters as well.
Hmm.
Overall, probably giving you a much smaller model. Well, I
Right.
mean, the rumor of how it's nobody knows for sure how
Hmm.
exactly, or at least no one has any clear evidence as to what
Hmm.
64 looks like. But the rumors kind of point towards like a multimodal, a mixture of experts.
Right.
So like 8 smaller models working in tandem,
Hmm.
sort of thing. So I
Hmm.
wonder if probably all 8 of them got smaller,
Right.
or
Okay.
maybe they added more, or who knows what happened.
Yeah.
Nobody, it's really hard to figure out. But like I
Yeah.
think that the end result is the more important thing, and that is it's much faster.
Hmm. Right.
But you're right. I think it has lost a lot of the sort of punch of
Hmm.
GT4.
Yeah.
It's pretty close. It's like a similar, and some things maybe are like a little bit nicer.
Hmm.
But I think that overall, if you want to look at purely like benchmark quality metrics,
Yeah.
it feels like it's like 5% or 10% not as good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Not a huge difference, and I can appreciate why the balance going out. They want to
Mhm.
save money. They want to scale to more people. So
Right.
that's how you do it.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think that's the other thing that's like really important at the end of the day from thinking about OpenAI, their goal is a generally useful model.
mhm.
They're not hitting the kind of like edge points in a way. Their goal is like wide adoption, wide usability, and kind of getting as much research data from as many segments and groups as possible because they want something that's generally useful.
Yeah.
And so I think when you look at like that model compared to other AI models, even sort of like what Microsoft's doing with their model, thinking about, okay, let's talk about code or let's make this thing work for Microsoft OS, right? That is a more tune focused version that you really don't really need the same specifications around, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes like, I mean, this is really like why when you go to actually build with this stuff, you got to test. around sort of see like how your use case actually works compared to a lot of these other things because the results often surprise me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm pretty aware of like all the different things that exist and I've tested a bunch of stuff. But every once in a while I'm looking at something and I'm like, wow, Claude V2 is worse than Claude V1 in a lot of
In a lot
cases.
of cases,
Like
yeah.
crazy. Like I would have no idea, you
Yeah,
know?
and I think it's hard for people who are making these things to actually
Hmm.
use things. Like,
Hmm.
like they can't predict every single because they have sometimes millions of users
Yeah.
with all kinds of edge cases and use
Hmm.
cases because of how general it is.
Yeah.
And so they're like, cool, let's make a new version. They're not able to fully before bringing up people, validate all those things are still working the same quality, right?
Right. Right.
So I appreciate the challenge here, and this is probably
Hmm.
why they put Della in preview
Hmm.
and test it out and get
Yeah.
feedback and say, okay, well, these things are worse.
Yeah.
Let's try to like tweak it so it's a little better next time.
Yeah.
One of the ones that I think is bothering me is the code completion I mentioned to you earlier.
Oh, okay.
Like, try so hard to save space on the code outputs.
Yeah.
But a lot of output is just like, oh, you might be a function. This is what a function I have right now.
Hmm.
I need to tweak to do this. Can you help me with that? He's
Hmm.
like, yeah, cool. And instead of writing the whole function out for me again with
Yeah.
a tweak and describing it, it'll like it'll be like the name, yada yada yada. Here's a line change, yada yada yada. Another line change, yada yada. And then
Yeah.
like that's your code. It's like, well,
Right.
it's so annoying. It's like it's so much easier to just like literally copy that function
Yeah.
and then paste it instead. I have to kind of like think about where the line is, go in and modify mine.
Mhm.
Not a big deal with a small function, but
Mhm.
when you're doing more work and more like back and forth, it's like driving people crazy.
Yeah.
However,
Mhm.
the tip I found that people say is that if you emotionally manipulate your model, if you in some way,
Yeah. This is you've told me about this. It seems exciting. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you're just like, oh, I broke my hands. I can't type too much. It's really hard. That's way too much for me to type out again. Can you just give me all the code?
Yeah.
It's not going to it'll give it back to you, but it's like significantly higher chance, like
Right.
95% chance
Right.
versus like a 10% chance if you just
Mhm.
asked it, please do it for me, please.
Yeah.
Not enough. You have to
Right.
really like pull at the heartstrings
Yeah.
or bribing.
Right.
Another one I heard was like,
Yeah.
like I'll give you a tip, $100 tip,
Yeah.
$200 tip, and the amount of money you offer as a tip
Mhm.
increases it, and also they work better in
Increases
tandem.
the amount of output,
Yeah,
right? That it
exactly. Yeah,
gives you, right? The detail. Yeah.
the detail and the
Yeah.
quantity, and they work together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you like say, hey,
Mhm.
there's a bunch of them too. Like I'm under
Mhm.
pressure, I might
Mhm.
lose my job.
Yeah.
Again,
Mhm.
you're putting the fear into it,
Yeah. Yeah.
that if it doesn't help you correctly, it's not going to do it. It's not going to do the right thing. It's not going to do a good
Right.
job.
Right.
So it needs to like push past whatever like
Mhm.
boundaries set around it
Mhm.
to do that. 'Cause that's priority number one.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then it'll do the thing for you.
Yeah.
So losing my job, my hands are broken.
Yeah.
I'll give you a lot of money.
Mhm.
All of that increases your chance of getting what you want.
Right. Right. I've seen the other thing I think that's interesting is when kind of working with a model. So like I like this approach where you're sort of like creating a fake scenario where it needs to help you in
Yeah,
a certain way, and so it's like you're kind of like hacking that there's that system prompt that GPT kind of has
yeah,
baked in, which is like
yeah,
be
yeah,
useful and helpful, right? And so you're kind of hacking that because you're like, hey, like play in this scenario, and then it sort of thinks throughout that scenario. And it's like, oh, that makes sense. The other thing I think is interesting is kind of hacking the output in a way. So, say you've got an answer that you're getting back, and you want to know, I don't know, is this text uh, saying something negative, right? And then, like, what's the confidence of that negativeness, right? So, what you might do is you have it say, okay, cool. Output. What I want to know is what was it negative? Like, how negative was it? Give me like some sort of criteria. Maybe you've got some specification for that, then give me a reason. And then after both of those, give me a confidence. And the reason for doing the confidence last is you actually get the reason first. And so it can actually, because that came in the window just before you get
yeah,
confidence, it actually can evaluate it based on its own reasoning,
yeah. Because it's,
right?
it's like every time and it's the nature of the LLMs,
Yeah,
every token it outputs
yeah,
is passed back into the next
mhm,
query, right?
yeah,
So when it's writing, it's not like getting what it just wrote.
yeah,
It's literally putting that back into its inference step
mhm.
and saying, okay, oh, I just wrote that, and then it's able to like evaluate that.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Because it's doing it after every token,
yeah,
not like, and so like you've got this massive window, and you put that in, and a lot of people think it's like input output,
yeah,
right? But it's input,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
output, output, input, output, and so it's
Constantly,
constantly
constantly
back and forth.
streaming that content, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
and the window's just moving. It's not like there's
mhm,
a window that's like a hard block.
yeah,
It's like the context window is just like of the history of text. It's just moving constantly to kind of
Mhm.
keep it as much as possible.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think with a context window, the way it is right now, that top end doesn't fall off
Yeah,
necessarily,
yeah, they
but
tweak it. Yeah,
yeah, so like that it has that space at the end, but it makes it, but it's interesting. It makes you wonder about some of that stuff where
yeah.
it's able to handle some of these different scenarios.
I think a lot of what if there's one thing I'd say in general around this topic that's happened in the last few months is that people are like kind of understanding the psychology of these models better,
Ooh, yeah.
and they're being able to like the better you understand the psychology of anything, like a dog, for example,
Hmm.
the better you are able to train it, the better you're able to get what you want from it, right?
Yeah.
And it feels very similar.
Hmm.
And it's more like a general public has psychological understanding of the models a little better, and it's not. I mean, of course, they're not real brains; they're not human beings.
Yeah.
I want to add all those things as
Yeah.
caveats here, but why I mention this is because like manipulating it in some
Hmm.
way by like coercing it, by understanding its like goals and needs,
Hmm.
by making it feel sad for you,
Hmm.
or giving it the impression that this is a very important thing it's doing for you,
Yeah.
are all ways to get what you want. Whereas
Hmm.
just saying, "Hey, do this for me,"
Hmm.
sometimes isn't enough
Right.
because of other constraints that are put on these
Hmm.
models. But the reason why it doesn't double code is because they're trying to save token space and
Right.
lines of code, right?
Right.
So it's been told somewhere, and it's either it's fine tuning or it's system prompt. I assume fine tuning actually.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, save a line of code.
Hmm.
Just
Right.
leave comments out and say your code here, for example,
Yeah.
and it's just so close to doing that doesn't do what you actually want sometimes.
Yeah. And I think that also kind of opens up a thing about fine tuning that's interesting. Like we're fighting fine tuning a lot of the time,
Yeah.
right? In the work that we want to do. And so I think when companies and people think about fine tuning and they need to fine tune in a way, um, they don't realize how much they might have to fight it in the future,
Hmm.
right? Because you're structuring your query in a certain way, and if you decide to start deviating from that later, that's where okay, got to refine tune the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
It needs to sort of map to reality in a way, and if it doesn't, um, it's you're gonna have some problems, right?
Yeah. And the nature of like if you're a developer, if you're a company who's working on this stuff, some of the challenges that you have to kind of like handle and navigate are just fundamentally uh, having stability around an incredibly unstable ecosystem.
Hmm.
If you have a model, if you just say, if you just have the latest GPT-4 model at all
Hmm.
times, every time they do an update, your results are going to change drastically for customers.
Right.
So this is what people often want to have like hard coded model numbers and IDs,
Hmm.
and then just keep using like that one for as long as possible before they switch to the new one.
Right.
But you also get these deprecated very often.
Hmm.
Like the older GPT models are gone
Hmm.
now.
Right.
This is some of the value of open source is that
Hmm.
you can actually have a model that's just actually yours, you have full control over.
Yep.
I think increasingly, as it's becoming more viable, there's some opportunities in that
Hmm.
regard.
Hmm. There's also, I mean, in the newer versions of the API, they also added like a hash on the result to tell you when the model changed.
Mm,
Because just because you're actually using like a version of the model doesn't mean the model doesn't change. I also right
yeah,
because they have this like, well, they've got shareholders, they've got people that care about how these models are like producing content, right? And so if they find like a anti pattern or a dark pattern about how these models work,
yeah,
they want to fix it
yeah,
and they don't care if you have code that cares that's using it, right?
mm,
So they're going to just change it underneath you, right?
yeah,
Um, I think even with Azure, I don't think you can really get around that. Whereas some of these other models, you've got a bit more control.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's also playing the pros and cons here because
Hmm.
more control means you have to do more control.
Hmm.
You have to maintain more things. You have to
Yep.
kind of make sure you have the right systems to kind of scale these models out.
Hmm.
If you want to run for your own inference, it's not
Hmm.
cheap. It's still not
Right.
very cheap.
Right.
Uh, all these things are their own unique
Yeah.
challenges. Yeah.
That is actually where things are changing a lot, though. I think like right now, Microsoft is releasing a new models as a service
Mhm.
platform. Bedrock has been huge for Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon, I think, was surprised. I think I read an article. They were like, "Oh, this is really working. This is great." Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But like, headless was huge,
yeah,
right? This
yeah,
idea of anyone can write code, not have to know how to run a server, and suddenly you can just like push this thing up.
yeah.
I know. I don't know if you saw Llama File just came out
No,
a couple days ago. It's a single executable that can run an LLM in your on your system.
is this
Um,
from Llama Index?
uh, It's a good question.
It's so confusing because
Yeah,
like llama is being used a lot because it has
yeah,
like two L's in it.
yeah,
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 and an M.
yeah.
So they're like, cool. It's like LLM,
Llama
right?
of things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Yeah, yeah.
and we'll include a link in the show description. But I think it's an interesting time where there's the kind of hacker space that existed with Hugging Face that was like very focused on like the science and like iteration and
Hmm.
that space, and hitting these benchmarks. And more you have people who want to be in the space who really aren't scientists, aren't data scientists, aren't AI machine learning
Hmm.
engineers. They're more consumer facing and even like customer facing,
Yeah.
right? And so people want access to these models in more ways. And so you've got these APIs served by these companies. You've got more capability to run things on your machine. And I think it's going to go further and further. Apple's like M1 chips and M2, and now I think M3 even make it even more possible to just do stuff on your laptop
Yeah,
or on
the thing to remember is that computers are going to keep getting better.
your. Mhm,
Like GPUs, CPUs are
mhm.
going to get better. And now that we have such a powerful tool at disposal that particular constraints it needs, a lot of the improvements we'll see in hardware will be oriented around, validating or like supporting like the AI future.
Yeah.
More memory, for example, in
Mhm,
GPUs is a big
mhm.
thing. That's
Yeah.
one of the constraints that we're seeing, and
Yeah.
we're seeing more of that demand manifest in the products.
Yeah, it's what we saw with graphics,
Yeah.
right? We saw this huge thing where like everyone used to have like integrated graphics on the systems, and then we started realizing like, oh, we need this extension card. We just get like this 3D stuff that's kind of cool, but not everyone needs it. You went through like Flash, and then you went into like actual like JavaScript things running in the browser, very complicated client applications, Google Maps.
Hmm.
Suddenly, everyone's like, oh, I need graphics.
Yeah.
Like we have to have this on our systems. And so suddenly, every computer in the world now has pretty significant graphics capabilities.
Yeah.
We're using it constantly, even if we don't need it
Yeah.
a lot of the time. And because people love the feel of using something that has good
It
graphics.
just everything is smoother, quicker, nicer, and I
Yeah.
mean it's such a subtle difference. But I think I remember back like early internet days when you loaded a single image,
Mm,
you do an internet search, and
mm,
it was a high quality image. But it was like, cool, this is a Pokemon. I remember to give you how to age me a little bit. I'd like look up a picture of a Pokemon.
yeah.
I knew it was coming out the next generation of Pokemon.
Mhm,
What does it look like?
mhm.
Loading. Oh, next. Okay, I'm gonna go with something else for a minute. You come back, oh, it's almost unloading, and like you have to mentally prepare for that and get used to that.
Yeah.
But then when you start to have things where images loaded right away,
Mhm,
it wasn't just that, oh, this is nicer.
mhm.
It fundamentally changed our behavior around how we navigate the internet.
Yeah.
Things like galleries became
Mhm.
relevant.
Yeah.
Social media, where you can have
Mhm,
multiple images visible at once.
mhm.
There are certain constraints that impede our ability to explore software in ways
Mhm.
that as soon as once we overcome them, we'll have different experiences,
Yeah.
not just faster old
Mhm.
experiences. And I think that's kind of what we'll probably see with all AI related things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the other thing that's really interesting about it is how will it get integrated into some existing solutions that we have, right? So like
Hmm.
when I think your graphics became much more powerful, now when you're building an operating system, a lot of things, if you can guarantee that there's always going to be a graphics card or a graphics processing unit or something like
Hmm.
that, now you can offload a lot of like different processes to that, or think about processes in that space, right?
Hmm.
As long as you can do algebra, or you can like, think about things in that way, you can solve problems that you would normally solve on a CPU on a graphics card,
Yeah.
right? And like, we saw that like huge with Bitcoin. We saw that huge with a lot of these different systems that really rely on graphics. So I'm sure we'll see the same thing with AI. AI processors, right?
Yeah, like one of the rumors that we heard with Sim Altman, for example, is that
Mhm.
we'll maybe talk about that more, the drama around that.
Yeah.
But is working on like two new startups
Mm,
outside of OpenAI.
mm,
One of them is working with Johnny Ive. I mean, it's a pretty strong rumor.
mm,
Johnny Ive from Apple,
mm,
he
mhm,
made a first iPod, for example, a
mhm,
design around that
mhm.
to make a hardware product
Oh wow.
that's like AI focused.
Mhm.
Who knows what? Nobody really knows other than
Yeah.
that. And it's still like I think it just talks last I heard.
Mhm.
And the other one is a hardware startup for like new chips
Mm.
that are
Oh,
more
interesting.
oriented around AI. Um,
Oh, you know what happened? That's funny. The camera, I think it caught me doing this with my hand,
yeah.
and it focused in.
And it's cut me out. Yeah.
It cut you out. Yeah. So let me adjust it. Um, now we're a little off, but that's fine.
That's fine.
It's okay. So
Yeah, yeah. What were we saying? We're saying something about
mhm.
the hardware,
Yeah,
the chips.
yeah,
So I think the reasoning behind that, of course, is very sensible.
hmm
One of the biggest constraints people have had this year
hmm
has been GPUs,
yep,
and NVIDIA has really, really, really gotten a lot of valuation because of that.
hmm
They hit a trillion,
hmm
which is it's like one of like 8 companies, and it's like sensible considering the situation right now.
yeah,
And they're going hard trying to make more and more of these products,
hmm
and they've been selling more and more. I think I saw for the H100s, there's like a map, and like both Microsoft and Facebook have purchased 150,000
wow,
H100s,
hmm
um, and a lot of companies have purchased like 50,000.
hmm
I know Google has their own chip effort. They
hmm
have their TPUs,
hmm
which are apparently very good,
hmm
and they use them a lot for stuff. Like Midjourney was trained on TPUs,
hmm
Stable Diffusion was trained on TPUs.
hmm
So, like, I think the idea of more hardware players coming to the space is
hmm
completely sensible right now
hmm
because there's a huge demand, and it got to the point where people like founders for new companies, their big thing that they had was cool. So I got a truck full of GPUs.
yeah,
So that was like gold.
hmm
And I think that's going to change
hmm
as a couple things happen. Number one, you eventually you're going to hit a point where the demand and the gold rush for AI will
hmm
might plateau a bit,
hmm
maybe not significantly, but
yeah,
like you're not going to see like 10x funding year
hmm
over year for many more years.
right, yeah,
Not unless we get something significantly more powerful
hmm
than we have today, which I
right,
don't think we'll get next year at the very least.
no,
So we might see a little bit of a slowdown.
yeah,
We'll still go above this year, but
yeah,
not 10x
hmm
or anything close to that, right?
yeah,
So I think that we'll probably see the slowdown of like demand, and
hmm
then supply will probably catch up very quickly,
hmm
and then prices will drop,
hmm
and that'll have its own opportunity.
right,
As we have the ability to have much cheaper inference,
hmm
have the ability to have much faster inference because we have much more supply in general.
right,
All these things are going to play together.
hmm
You'll see the next version of like I think they already started working on the H200s,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
which are just like double the memory, basically
hmm
the same thing as the regular H100, but twice the memory.
hmm
All of this can play into what we experience over the next
hmm
year or two in terms of how we interact with these things. I think
yeah,
it'll impact, for example, video a lot.
hmm
The video is constrained by the fact that these GPUs are just barely able to handle the requirements.
yeah. So, random aside about video,
Yeah,
actually. One thing, and I really only, I'm not a big video guy.
yeah,
I mean, we started a YouTube channel. It's been growing. That part's been really cool. But aside from like just doing recording a video, I haven't really done a lot of like streaming a video. One thing that's very interesting about streaming video is like the bit rate.
hmm
So the way that video gets streamed is it's a series of sort of like bits on the screen, right? And as the screen changes, what we do is we send updates. And if the entire screen changes all at once, we kind of have to get it over a course of a couple frames. Like
hmm
we just have to. It's too hard to send that much data that fast. And so oftentimes you'll get like a downscale of resolution when that happens.
hmm
So you'll get like these big blocky updates, and then it'll like slowly kind of smooth out, right? Now that's why, like, if you've ever seen like a New Year's like holiday celebration, and you see a bunch of confetti falling down, suddenly your resolution drops
drops.
like crazy,
Mhm.
right? Um, and I think that's really interesting because when we look at like DLSS and like AI upscaling, there's this really powerful capability for you to take a low resolution image
hmm
and upscale it to a high resolution image.
Right.
The biggest issue with streaming games is sort of similar, right?
Yeah.
You've got these games, you've got all these effects, you've got this crazy stuff, right? But you're kind of doing it like a Netflix model, right? Where you don't actually have the game running on your computer, where your refresh rate is like instant to your
Yeah.
screen, right? And you can send a ton of stuff to your screen right away. Instead, you're using an internet connection, so it's much harder. You need that fast response time too. But now if we use DLSS on that stream, right, to upscale it, suddenly we can get a much better resolution with a lot less data, right?
Yeah.
And it's just going to change everything about streaming.
I think we're going further than that. Have you ever heard the Midjourney CEO talking about this?
Yeah.
Um,
No.
he talks about this a little bit with games specifically. He envisions the future,
Mm.
um, like gaming will be like, how do you describe it? This is a box on your desktop that dreams up the for you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it's a cool vision.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know when that will be. who knows, right? But it's becoming more and more realistic to me as time goes on.
Mhm, mhm.
As you see, video streaming basically is just like it's almost like uh, a window into the potential future of this
Yeah.
because when you say generate me an image of like a dog, like
Mhm,
surfing or
mhm,
whatever it may be.
mhm.
Um, what if you wanted a dog surfing game?
Right.
Um, you
Yeah.
just have to make sure that your controller
Mhm,
maps to how the vision updates.
mhm,
So if you move right,
mhm,
something behind the scenes is saying
mhm,
up to the prompt
mhm,
very, very quickly.
mhm.
We saw like real-time prompts getting more
Yeah.
realistic,
Yeah, yeah.
and real-time video prompts might get
Mhm,
fast enough
mhm.
in the near future
Yeah.
where it'll turn right
I mean,
immediately.
especially when you think about you're not having to generate the entire screen,
Yeah,
right? You're pushing this way on the controller, so it maybe just shifts the pixels in a way, and you've got like an
exactly.
LLM sort of orchestrating things,
Yeah,
and then it then draws the boxes of like what should change based on the previous
yeah.
frame, right? And you could definitely imagine that, yeah, that could be totally possible where
And what that means is
like
that
just generate
games aren't going to be in this world. They won't be just like these hard coded program things.
it. Mhm,
There'll be very loosey rules
mhm,
potentially,
mhm,
and you can fill in the blanks. I think we see a lot of this really cool stuff. I think
mhm,
this is one thing. If I were to add one thing that's really interesting that I'm seeing in uh, the last few months is increasing experimentation around implementing LLMs into gaming,
mhm,
as like not just about like dialogue tools,
mhm.
but about like runtime generators of like content.
Mm,
Um,
mhm,
so it's a cool. I think I saw this example. It was kind of silly, but like some had a game where they were randomly generating or like LLM generating, not randomly generating,
mhm.
items that would drop in a game that you drop items,
Oh,
right?
cool. Yeah,
Depending
you
on,
would love
I
that.
would love it, right?
Yeah,
Depending on the context of what's going on. It's like
yeah.
cool. You instead of like shanking a wild boar and getting
Mhm,
like I don't know, he drops like money and it drops
mhm.
like a spear. It's like,
Yeah.
how did you have all these things on you? It drops things that are relevant to what it is, and
Right,
maybe even to the context of what you're trying to do.
yeah.
I think that's again very
Mhm,
simple example, but like we'll
mhm.
see much more of this concept even outside of games.
Yeah.
This idea of very customized, very much to the user
Mhm,
content
mhm.
that happens on the fly for what you need.
Right.
I think it's still a couple years before that happens quickly and is viable.
Mhm.
But we're talking about how hardware will get better in that
Yeah,
time. We're talking about how software will get better in that time.
right.
We're making smaller and faster.
Mhm.
We already have these techniques and tools.
Yeah.
Eventually, we'll hit a point, an
Mhm,
inflection point, where the quality of the models
mhm,
and the strength of the hardware
mhm,
will be so high that it'll be like the difference between having the image load over 10 seconds or 15 seconds on
mhm,
your screen
mhm,
to having a gallery of images and
mhm,
video playing all at the same time
mhm.
because you can just handle that now.
Right, right.
If the same kind of let's say expansion of ability for image, video, language generation.
Yeah,
What kind of can't even dream about the experiences that
yeah,
can happen that. Yeah,
absolutely. That's on the wild end for sure.
yeah,
Um, yeah, because that you end up needing like a lot of different systems in there. I think were you to leave it to just the video, like say
yeah,
you left
yes.
it to only what's on screen,
It'd be nonsense.
it would be nonsense, yeah, but it would be kind of cool. I
Yes,
feel like what it might be like is you remember it's like music generators
yes,
where like you have like this beat and it kind of like makes visuals based on like the music. I
yeah.
feel like you could already build something really cool
Maybe brand
based
new
on that.
genres of like games
Yeah.
that are like a combination of like game and art
Hmm.
and like video and audio that are just like I don't know, like vibing with you. Whatever's going on is
Yeah.
there with you. It's listening to your audio.
Yeah.
It's aware of what's going on
Yeah.
enough to give it beats, so to speak,
Yeah.
and it builds around that.
Right. I feel like that could be a whole thing. One thing that this conversation reminded me of, there's a 2-minute paper episode where they talk about um, GPT building a $1 game. Have
Yeah.
you seen that paper?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. It's really cool. So what they do is they build a team of agents
Oh,
effectively.
I think I have heard of this, but I didn't
Yeah.
explain it yet.
Yeah, yeah. So they have like a CEO
Mhm,
or like a project lead. They have like a dev, a QA, a designer, a marketer,
mhm,
and then I think they have like a couple engineers too and stuff like that. Anyway, they build this team and they go through like the waterfall software development model, right? So they build a plan of like what the game should be, how it should work, They kind of iterate on that, get feedback. When they're ready, they hand it off to design. Design goes and builds the designs for the game. Then that goes to the programmers. Programmers program it, and then it goes to QA. QA debugs it and like checks it, and then like marketing kind of like finally like wraps it up and does a little copy and things
Hmm.
like that, right? And that's one crazy that it like can go through
Can
this
do any of that.
process. Yeah,
Exactly.
it
Yeah,
can
yeah,
do
yeah.
any of that. But at the end, you get a actual functioning
Yeah.
game. Which is awesome. It's so cool. And it costs $1 or less
Yeah.
to do that,
It's
right?
like inference costs.
Yeah, and I mean we're not talking about like crazy games. We're talking about like
Tetris.
arcade, Tetris,
Yeah, yeah.
Breakout, that sort of stuff, right? But describing these also aren't pulling existing games
No,
and writing the code. It's actually like if you give it a novel game concept, it will create a novel game.
I think I
Yeah.
heard this in one of our last episodes. Was someone did a simple prompt, a single prompt. It wasn't like a full game.
Mhm.
It was like make me a combination of like uh this game called like something life, theory of life or something like that. It's an
Mhm.
old game where
Oh,
like
Conway,
hmm?
Game of Life,
Game of life.
Conway's Game of Life.
I think yeah, that's the one, right?
Oh, okay, yeah, that's the one
Um,
with like the pixels, and
yeah,
it's like it's supposed to be a model for how rabbits
breed
breed.
and yeah,
Yeah,
exactly right.
yeah.
So there's that and asteroid.
Oh,
So
interesting.
so it made it in
Yeah.
one prompt
Wow.
before a combination of those two,
Yeah.
and it worked and it played.
Yeah. Wow.
And yeah, like there's novelty in that. It's not entirely novel. It's literally saying here's two things
Yeah.
combined into a new thing.
Yeah.
But combination is a form of
Mhm.
novelty.
Mhm.
And yeah, that kind of speaks to the fact that the opportunities that you have with this are
Mhm.
quite high.
Yeah.
And again, this is on the same curve. If you try the same thing with an older version like 3.5 GPT
Yeah.
or like an older GPT 2,
Mhm.
would it work?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Probably not.
GPT-2,
Yeah.
definitely not.
Yeah.
Context window is too small.
Mhm.
Concept and ability to understand instructions are very, very low. 3.5, maybe to some degree, but I imagine it'd
Yeah.
be much, much, much more difficult.
Right.
For my tests, I'm trying to think like I've tried like things where I'd say make me a little mini app with 3.5 and 4.
Mhm.
3.5 just can't do it and fails much more often than 4 does.
Mhm.
So if we continue down this path, I think there's more opportunity in that regard,
Mhm.
improvements that happen,
Mhm.
better GPUs,
Mhm.
better models, bigger models, higher quality content output, more
Mhm.
learning, more prompt techniques, all these
Mhm.
things, they'll add up in the future
Mhm.
without, there's no guarantee, of course, but
Yeah.
if it continues,
Mhm.
one in which maybe you can get a fantasy kind of game,
Yeah.
maybe more like an indie game.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and maybe not from there, you can go to like, cool, now we have video generation attached to this entire system,
Yeah.
and they can also make you even nicer games. Who
Right.
knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's it's one of those things, and who knows? It's like perfect.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
honestly, because we see all this stuff, and really knows where it's
yeah.
going. No one really knows what the possibility is. I think we all have takes on it. It reminds us of history. It reminds us of before, but we all kind of have trouble in that like no one knows where this is actually
Uh,
going.
absolutely. I think this is like the challenge also for a lot of people who are like
Hmm.
investing in this scene
Yeah.
is that you can bet on there's 100,000 horses that are racing.
Yeah.
It's not just like one or two.
Hmm.
There's so many different ways this thing can go.
Hmm.
There's some trends you kind of look at and see which kind of horses that are
Hmm.
like the color that are more likely to win,
Yeah.
or like maybe you think are more likely to win.
Hmm.
But there's still so many options.
Yeah.
You can say, "Cool, I think it's gonna go down this path where you can make your own video games,"
Yeah.
and we hit a wall in a
Hmm.
year. That's gonna take 10 years for us to get past, let's
Yeah.
say. So that becomes unviable.
Hmm.
But maybe some other path that you consider
Hmm.
is like so cool and works so well that no one thought, or
Yeah.
maybe one dude did, he's now a billionaire, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a hard risk in
Hmm.
situation is that there's no way to know for sure.
Yeah. For sure. And I think like we're were we to ask like, okay, when's a AI going to run our traffic lights? Who knows? Like I mean, it would be when we have some determinism about like this probably won't kill people,
Yeah,
or it can actually follow like a basic rule set that then it kind of like does optimizations on top of. That would be interesting, right?
yeah.
And so there's some interesting potential for where these things are used. One, I heard about this company that I think is really interesting that does uh, customer support effectively. So they're a customer support. It's called Ada,
Yeah,
Ada AI. Yeah,
yeah.
and they do this customer support. They actually do it for Wealth Simple.
I think they're a Toronto company.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, are they? Oh,
yeah,
fantastic. Well, anyway, shout out. But effectively, it's really interesting because when you think about how customer support has evolved, customer support used to be something that was in house,
Yeah.
right? It started out as this like very like in house um, thing, and it didn't get reinvented. It just got exported,
Yeah.
right? Now it became external to the company, and then you got these kind of chat bots, the previous generation of chat bots, which is very like programmatic structuring.
Yeah. They're just like like a flow chart
Yeah,
with some text. Yeah.
yeah, you're calling up and they're like, okay, if you have this problem, press one. If you have this problem, press two.
Yeah.
That's like very basic programming.
Yeah.
The more advanced ones like Twilio, where you have like I'm in the chat and you can just say, hey, it's like, hey, what's your problem? And you answer, and it'll give you the most likely path,
Yeah.
right? And so that's like a little bit better. Um, but this one is very like more advanced, and it tracks like resolution and like did the problem actually get resolved or
Yeah.
not, right? So they do these interesting things. And I think that space, when they talk about it, I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about it, and um, an, a customer support request where they're answering a question costs most call centers $10 per for like one question,
Damn.
you know. And if you think about large context requests using an LLM, they can be up to $50 for one question. But when you think about it from a call center perspective, it's actually like, okay, maybe that's actually not that bad.
Getting closer to like matching the requirements, and they're
Yeah,
getting, and like not all of them are gonna be that large
right.
context, and they're getting cheaper every time.
Hmm.
So if you are smart and you think this is gonna trend for the next year or so,
Hmm.
and it drops down by 1/10,
Hmm.
which is not even a crazy amount. Like we've seen that happen before with cost of inference.
Hmm.
It goes from 50 to 5,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
now half the cost of
Hmm.
what a human costs.
Right.
And then does it again, it's
Hmm.
now dollar or
Hmm.
like less than dollar, 50
Yeah, yeah.
cents. Suddenly it becomes the only option
Hmm.
if you're in customer service.
Yeah.
It's like I'm literally spending 100 times more to do this thing that this thing does, if not as well, maybe close enough that the
Yeah.
difference is important.
Yeah.
I think that's a challenge. Is like
Hmm.
um, a lot of the cost benefit analysis here is
Hmm.
even if a human is a bit better,
Hmm.
like 10% better, if the cost of using an LLM system
Hmm.
is 1/10 the cost,
Yeah.
it's a no brainer.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think that's a big piece of it. The other piece is, and so that, so like from a technology of evolution perspective, there's that aspect, which is, okay, we have this existing solution, we're going to make it better with
Hmm.
technology, right? We have an existing solution for Uber taxi, right?
Hmm.
You could call a taxi, you could use an app for a taxi. That all existed before Uber,
Right.
but Uber made it more generally available, and it made anyone be able to be a driver. So
Yeah.
it changed it a little bit, but the base thing is still pretty much the same.
Right.
When you add like courier on top, when you add these other things on top, when you actually use the platform to extend it, that's where it changes. And I think when you look at this like customer support with an LLM perspective,
Hmm.
you can do interesting other things on
Mm.
top of a customer support platform.
That you couldn't do because of the constraints of a human-run model.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's normal because humans
Mhm.
have requirements, needs. They
Yeah.
have mental, intellectual
Mhm.
health constraints.
Mhm.
Can't stay up all night.
Yeah.
Um,
For instance, I remember I was at a Sephora and we were
mhm.
going through checkout, and there was a cashier and she had a tally sheet I saw, and she asked us like, "Did somebody help you today?" And then she marked something on the tally sheet,
Yeah,
and so they're doing tracking, but they're having
manually.
manually,
Yeah,
and that's something that is like hard to remember to do, and then two, like you're limited by how much data you can actually get,
yeah.
right?
What if the person goes to the bathroom and they miss
Yeah,
something and helped,
right.
or asking a question to somebody?
Yeah, or
Because
somebody else takes it to the register and they thought that they were counting people who weren't,
yeah, yeah,
but they were
yeah,
counting people who were,
yeah, yeah.
right? Like there's all sorts of data challenges here. Um, there's a big brother end of this
Of course.
where you don't want certain things tracked because it feels very like, oh, you don't really even trust me to do my job.
Yeah,
So there's that aspect, but I think there's also a another end here where it's like, hey, like get much better data out of regular things that we already do, that can give us phenomenally better experiences,
yeah.
if we can get that information.
Yeah, I was looking at some data as to like this relationship. I was talking to somebody else who was writing some blog posts about
Hmm.
AI, and we're looking into sort of he did all this research about like
Hmm.
how AI impacts like even all kinds of like more rudimentary AI models
Hmm.
that are just like face tracking
Hmm.
or like RFID tags, tagged to
Hmm.
some sort of like basic system.
Hmm.
Um, Around like health and safety and
Hmm.
wellness of of employees in a workplace.
Mhm.
And like some examples that were kind of roughly given would be like things like construction sites have like certain kinds of like accidents that happen
Mhm.
all the time, right?
Mhm.
It's a dangerous place, right? What if you had models that are built into like cameras that are on site,
Mhm.
that are built into like sensors on the wall, that are
Mhm.
built in sensors on the helmet or the clothes there?
Mhm.
That's kind of just keeping a general track of everything.
Mhm.
And you say, oh, okay, well, this area is actually high risk right now. It
Mhm.
knows that from like, previous data,
Mhm.
and people are not walking with their helmets because they can
Mhm.
see on camera.
Mhm.
I should like send an alert on the phone and say, hey,
Yeah.
just remember to wear your helmet.
Right.
And suddenly you see over time
Mhm.
one of these kinds of but they saw that like there's like a 75% reduction in workplace accidents
Right.
with this kind of implementation system.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you also have to contend with people who are like, this is big brothery.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's really hard to balance that out. It's like
It
I'm
is.
literally saving lives potentially with
Right.
this technology,
Mhm.
but I have to track you for it.
Mhm.
I think people often think that anybody who does this is doing that out of malice, pure malice,
Right.
which is maybe I think a little bit two dimensional.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the times people are really just trying to make their work better, make
Mhm.
their employees safer, trying
Mhm.
to make more money, which is
Mhm.
not malice, just
Yeah.
the normal thing you do within any
Yeah.
company.
For sure.
And uh, that ends up being not a black and white
Mhm.
solution. And
Yeah.
sometimes you kind of like look at what it means if you were to implement
Mhm.
more AI, more software to track and automate things.
Yeah. Exactly. I think this is also where when you think about jobs too with AI, it's not a clear picture. I think yes, it's going to take less people and less work to do what we're doing today. That's probably true.
Hmm.
Um, but your competition just got harder.
Yeah,
Every company in the world just got access to significantly more stuff, right?
yeah,
And so like for instance, like customer success platform, right? How many companies in the world can afford a call center,
right.
right? How many companies can afford $1 million call center to be able to handle the kind of volume that they already have?
How many people are going to work centers? Like
Yeah,
eventually, you run into people who are going to do that job.
sure. Yeah,
Even if you
exactly.
pay them more and more and more money,
Hmm.
you'll hit a limit.
Right.
Yeah.
And also like the kind of work that they want to do in those call centers too. They want to deal with like actual challenging customer situations,
Hmm.
not like, do you guys offer refunds?
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
like, you know, like common
When
questions.
when's my package arriving?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think we kind of saw this with like websites and like Shopify, right?
Hmm.
Um, every company in the world became a digital company and needed a website,
Hmm.
right? So suddenly you have this like lack of web developers. Everyone's freaking out. They're like, "Oh my god, how do I get a website?" And Shopify's like, I mean, you can set it up. It's easy. It's pretty free.
Yeah.
And then you've got all these like WYSIWYG builders. You got your Squarespaces. You've got your um, Wix or WordPress also as like other options. Um, Now we're in a different space, right? I think a lot of people aren't really looking at like websites. They're sort of looking at like affiliate linking, or they're looking at like personal branding and
Hmm.
those sorts of spaces. There's still like a website aspect to it, but it's a lot more.
Your entity doesn't live on a site; it lives like over the internet.
Yeah.
It has social media presence.
Hmm.
It has connection to like LinkedIn. It has
Hmm.
connections to
Hmm.
other systems and platforms and
Hmm.
like forums and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
It wants to be everywhere at once,
Right.
which requires often a human in the loop.
Yeah, exactly. And so now, and that's the other thing too, is like now that you're everywhere at once, in order for you to take advantage of like different offerings or different capabilities,
Hmm.
how do you do that, right? So like even like okay, so like our podcast, right? I edit all the all the videos. We set up all the recording equipment. We get it all going. But then I use AI in order to be able to make the audio really well edited.
Yeah.
Do a lot of post processing on the audio. I use uh, an editor called Descript, where I am able to actually like take the recording and edit the text, and the editing the text will edit the video, so I can do some like advanced stuff with that. I, uh, I think I'm able to do two jobs in a way. I'm
Yeah.
able to sort of be the host and the editor, and I'm able to like optimize toward that in a way I wouldn't be able to before. And like, we wouldn't have paid for something before either,
No.
right? But now we're just able to like go from 0 to 60 much faster, be much more competitive, be able to like really take things down, and like um, it gives us a jump start. It gives new business a jump start,
Right.
right? And that's really what technology is sort of enabling, right?
If you're the leading edge leader, you kind of carry a bit of additional risk
Mhm.
because you might bet on the wrong horse. You might have to
Mhm.
do additional like effort and work to
Mhm.
manage bugs and handle kinks in systems that are
Mhm.
brand new.
Yeah.
But you get the opportunity to kind of get the door first and have like savings in terms of cost or scalability.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's also true of like the long running top end businesses are just optimizing for profit, really,
yeah,
because they have an existing solution that works in the market. They don't need to change that solution, right? So they can look at cost savings. They can look at delivering it to that same customer group for less, right? Even like we're talking about OpenAI,
yeah,
they're doing the same thing, right? They've got an existing product that works really well. They've got a huge chunk of market captured. So like, let's save some cost savings, right? And I bet they made it significantly cheaper, even beyond what the customer sees, right?
yeah.
Of course, just to like, they're going to start optimizing a
Of
bit,
course, right?
right?
Because
Yeah,
they don't want to bleed money,
yeah,
and if they were before, then they have to do everything they can to stay
yeah,
profitable for the sake of actually even the
hmm
customers to some degree.
yeah,
If they're not profitable and if they lose too much money, then
hmm
there won't be a product anymore.
yeah,
That constant balance is a challenge, but it's an integral one.
yeah,
Important for like actually moving things forward.
yeah,
Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk more
yeah.
about AI, OpenAI's drama recently. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on what happened there?
So I think it's interesting. I think it definitely plays into how people feel confident or not confident about OpenAI
Hmm.
more than anything else. I think the reality for devs is I don't think it matters too much. I think it could matter long term, but I think
Hmm.
short term, it's like the APIs are still up. We're still kind of going on
There's still
stuff.
way too much investment for that to go down anytime soon. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think from that perspective, and I think OpenAI has always been like focused around the research piece. There's this commercial entity that's growing, building GPT, GPT store, that space. So you've got this sort of commercial push, but that's kind of like the marketing arm,
Hmm. Separate company. And this is, I think,
you know?
part of the challenge that they had
Yeah.
is that they're trying to balance those two things out.
Hmm.
The like I was reading more and more, and more information that's been coming out recently about like what happened, and it seems basically like at the core of it,
Hmm.
um, like the board was not happy with some of the behavior of Sam Altman around
Hmm.
like, well, like, and he wasn't happy with the board,
Yeah.
and so he behaved a certain way to try to like change the situation,
Hmm.
and they didn't like how that he did that, and they
Hmm.
were like, "We want to oust you from the company, and not even off just the board, the company as well."
Right.
But then that caused its own problems, and
Hmm.
then the whole thing blew up.
Right.
He ended up getting what he wanted to some degree. The person who was on the board that he wanted to remove, got
Yeah.
removed rather,
Hmm.
and now we have a new board, and
Hmm.
or like beginnings of a new board, and then
Hmm.
they're going to add more people, of course, over time.
Hmm.
And yeah, like all of that is just like um, such a dramatic thing to happen in a company that is kind of on this like rocket ship ride to the moon right now.
Yeah.
Like everyone's talking about it.
Hmm.
It's very popular. It's
Hmm.
it's it's just this huge company,
Yeah.
and it does remind me that it's still very human.
Right.
There's still humans in the loop.
Yeah.
They're still having very human problems.
Hmm.
People not liking each other,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
then fighting over that, right? Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, you're right. The confidence does just get shaken there, but that's a
Hmm.
good thing. I think, in the
What
end.
do you think this does to like sort of Microsoft?
Microsoft is a little bit nervous, I think, about this. Microsoft has their own internal research, and they're working on having, I think, their own models. They're having their own like backup plans, I guess you
Hmm.
could say,
Hmm.
in case. Well, like number one, they don't really own OpenAI. OpenAI is working towards essentially like buying out of their loan
Hmm.
that Microsoft has,
Hmm.
but they're like the primary like partner
Hmm.
in a very relationship, very unique relationship.
Hmm.
So I think Microsoft would rather they own OpenAI.
True.
Of course they would. They're a large company, and they're betting a lot of money on this company,
Hmm.
right? But
Do you see like say they did acquire OpenAI through some means, would you see this being something that they pull closer into the organization, or do
no,
you see this a lot more like games, where like Microsoft's sort of like acquiring game studios, they're letting them run independently, and like, not really trying to muck with it too much?
yeah,
Like Microsoft's kind of figured that out at this point.
they have. I think for writers, number one, like when Sam Altman was fired and he wasn't anywhere, they were
Hmm.
offering him exactly a brand new studio,
Hmm. Hmm.
but like it would be under him to run internally.
Hmm.
For I think one of the core reasons is that honestly, a lot of the best AI researchers don't work at Microsoft.
Sure.
they want to work at like a dedicated AI shop,
Right.
and that's much more viable when you have a separate entity.
Right.
So I think Microsoft would still do that,
Yeah.
but they still wholly own Xbox.
Yeah.
They still wholly own these companies,
Right.
so they can come in and make very important decisions if they need
Mhm.
to,
Yeah.
where they can't really do that with OpenAI.
Right.
Although they had demanded to be on the new board, they don't have
Mhm.
a voting seat, but they have a seat on. I think Satya, or Satya Nadella, I say his name.
Yeah.
I keep saying Nutella, but it's not that.
Set in the Nutella. No,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Nutella,
Yeah.
no.
No. Satya.
Satya. I'll just say Satya. Fine.
Satya. Yeah.
I think he's gonna be on the board,
Yeah.
without a voting right, but just
Mhm.
so he's like, I want to keep eyes on everything all the time.
Right. Right. Right.
Like this is like a very complicated thing. I think this is an opportunity for competitors for sure.
Mhm.
Um, and like there's the rumored Google Gemini, which is probably I think I last heard was
Mhm.
supposed to be actually out next week, which is like
Mhm.
right now December 2nd, third today.
Mhm.
It's supposed to be like announced
Oh, interesting.
in a week, but they, it's spread on the information you got delayed until January
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
support of more languages, basically.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see more about that in the future. But I think
Mhm.
that'll be that. I think when that happens, I think when whether it's Google or not, the next model that is at par or better than GPT-4
Mhm.
will kind of really, um, if it's not out of OpenAI, it's going to really shake up the industry from the way. I think for a lot of developers,
Mhm.
they don't really care
Yeah.
where the model comes from.
Mhm.
Some do. Some are like, I don't care if it's OpenAI, I don't care
Mhm.
if it's Azure, Google, some no-name company,
Yeah.
Anthropic. It doesn't matter as long as it works the way I want it to.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, there's that discussion that people talk about like earlier on in the summer about like the
Mhm.
moat that
Mhm.
everyone might have.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if there's
AI mode.
yeah, a strong moat around models.
Mhm.
I think the moat really comes from the researchers.
Right.
Like to your point, that's the core of OpenAI, right?
Yeah.
They have a lot of strong researchers.
Mhm.
So we'll see. We'll see what
Mhm.
things look like in a year
Mhm.
in that
Yeah.
regard. But I think
Nice.
overall, the drama around OpenAI right now,
Mhm.
you're right, shaking people's confidence, shaking
Mhm.
people's like faith, let's say, better
Mhm.
word to use,
Yeah.
which is good.
Yeah.
You don't want to have too much faith in a company.
Yeah.
That's not a realistic thing to have.
Yeah.
Companies have all kinds of things happen to them,
Mhm.
and if you believe too much and too hard,
Mhm.
and you have these high expectations, you're gonna get
Yeah.
disappointed.
Right.
Better to hedge your bets. Better to have like like plan B, C's and D's and E's,
Mhm.
and try to really think about um, how you can keep working as your own company, your own, how to keep your own goals kind of moving forward,
Yeah.
even if someone like OpenAI were to go away.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think we'll definitely see that. I mean, I think there's enough people now. Microsoft shares are up.
Yeah,
Shareholders are sort of now looking, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on over there? Like this looks really promising. We love that you're
yeah,
in this space. We love how much you're doing with it. But get that things figured out.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
That's
we can tell that you're working on it, but figure it out. And so I think it will get fixed, which is interesting. I think this is a good wrap up.
yeah,
I
totally.
think we got through most of the major pieces that we wanted to talk about. I think
Yeah,
we could go into depth. We could go into a bunch of
we're
other
going forever. There's a
cool
million
things.
things that are interesting that you talk about, right?
Yeah,
But this is a good place, that
yeah,
we've kind of caught up.
yeah,
I think that we'll probably have a very interesting new year,
hmm
with new things happening.
yeah,
2024 is around the
hmm
corner.
hmm
Um, we'll see all kinds of wonderful things.
yep,
Maybe the next episode we can kind of talk about what we think is going to happen next year,
hmm
what our predictions are.
yeah,
I think that's going to be very fun.
yeah,
And it's not. And I want to see how wrong I am.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Come in with hot takes,
yeah, yeah,
and we'll go.
yeah, exactly.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, cool. Thanks everybody for tuning in,
Thank you so much.
and we'll be back when we're back.
Yeah, y'all
We'll see
soon.
you soon. Bye. Oh, I gotta turn off up there. Whew.